Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Doom Patrol. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. We do have the return of Mr. Nobody, and I love that moment of just kind of like, Cliff kind of figures out, wait, something's up with the place, kind of realizing where they're at, and then all of a sudden, it's like, it turns to him, and then like a buffer screen that pops up. I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. And then it's like, oh, Mr. Nobody's looking at the situation because the D-Creator's been summoned and everything, and it's like, he's like, oh crap, this can't be happening. It's like, look, your kids can't do anything, can they, Niles? And I love him being like, this can't be the end. Haven't been in the last 2 episodes. It's something I also noticed throughout the episode too. It's like, because obviously he has like this omnipotent power where he can alter reality and stuff like that. He doesn't actually have to say anything, but we've seen that he can just do it, by action or, by snapping his fingers or doing all this, but it's like he doesn't actually have to say it. I think he does it just for dramatic purposes as a narrator to the story and everything. I think that's just him being an extra layer of an asshole, So I even love it being like, wait, I'm not gonna have to sit here and watch a whole bunch of flashbacks because we learn about Jane's situation, which, interesting enough, turns out Jane doesn't age. I guess in the retrospect, I guess when it comes to Rita, it kind of makes sense that she doesn't age, just because of the way her skin is and everything like that. It's probably like, yeah, I wonder, does she actually have immortality just the way she is and stuff like that? I don't know if it works like that. I would have assumed, I know Luffy ages from, One Piece, so I'd assume the same thing would apply to her, because I would assume obviously like the rest of her body's kind of like made from the same consistency and stuff like that, but I guess because like she can constantly just reshape herself, so I guess there's no part of her body falling apart considering her body's all elastic like that. I don't know, it's something to think about. I never even thought of it like that, but it turns out she's the same age. And it makes sense that Larry is too, because it's like, to be fair, Larry is technically speaking in a certain regard a walking corpse, so it's like as long as that spirit's inside of him, his body's already technically dead in a certain regard, so I guess it's like there's no decaying, no more further decaying like beyond what it is. It's just kind of, I guess the spirit inside keeps him in a complete state of where he left off. Nevertheless, it was just something interesting to notice that Jane doesn't age, but we see, it kind of sucks because she's at that mental place. It's sad kind of like seeing the way the people there kind of treat her, kind of beating her up like that, and she's like, what was it? It's like, where were you? In your mother's gaping ass. Come on. And it's like, what did you say? And she's like, what? That your mom's in hell giving, like, blowjobs or something. Like, I'm like, dude, what the fuck? Dude, that's crazy she'd say that. But obviously, it was so interesting, because obviously we got introduced to one of our other personas, that is Dr. Harrison. Now, that's interesting. She basically can influence and charm people. That's interesting. And because it's so interesting, because obviously you start seeing the doctor kind of start to break down like he's in a therapy session or something. She's like, now who are the monsters in your life? Was it your mom? The way you're acting and stuff like that is, she's like a, therapist and a doctor in a sense. So it's funny. Not funny, it's interesting. I really like that conversation she had where it's like, because the doctor was like, oh, where's K? How did K become J? Was it because your world was big and filled with monsters? And later on she was like, yes, it was, but now my world is small and I'm the monster. I was like, oh, I love that line, and I just love the delivery of it too. It's just like, that's a good line, dude. Once again, we know bits and pieces about, like, we saw a little bit of how she became who she is, but we haven't really seen how everything kind of broke down. Because obviously, like, there is no control in this situation. She kind of jumps from one persona to the other. You do wonder, like, why is it some personas decide to take over? Like, is it a thing of, like, okay, I'm done, so you can step in? Or, do they kind of like, is there like a line and, if someone wants to take control, they kind of push the other personas aside in this line and step forward, or what? Like, I want to know how the system works inside of her body, because it does seem like it might be random, but it's like, you just happen to pull out certain personalities at a certain point in time, like when Cliff was pissing off, the particular persona, calling her useless and stuff like that, Hammerhead switched over, so it's like, and it almost seems like there's certain triggers to kind of bring certain personas out, like especially when she kind of, like, because, Hammerhead's, I think, the protector of all the personas, like when shit needs to be taken care of and, some of the other personas need to be looked after, I think she kind of steps up. That's the role I feel like she kind of plays. She kind of plays the protector and whatnot, so that's interesting. But I love this crazy plan of theirs, and it's so interesting because obviously, like, Niles gets brought back into this world. It's so interesting too because he was like, well, part of himself or something like that. So I guess it was supposed to be a representation of like a fraction of him was pulled from whatever dimension Mr. Nobody was holding him in, and it's like you can be in this world, but he put that little trap inside of Niles that every time someone mentions Mr. Nobody, he throws up. I'm like, that's such an asshole thing to do. It's like you could have done anything, like, oh, you could have turned him into a bomb or something like that. It's like, no, you just made him into that, and that's kind of shitty. Obviously there's the whole thing about how, you know, using Jane in the past to basically create a cult, a counter cult to the D-Creator called the Recreator. Even Dr. Harrison is like, oh, this is actually kind of terribly written and stuff like that. And so she basically amasses a cult of her own, and I love how everything's broken down. And I remember that conversation where the dude was kind of like, oh man, this is actually a pretty good cult. And the other guy was like, yeah, I know. It's better than 3 other cults I was in. And then, like, the fact is she's convincing all these different people, even some of the doctors there at the facility. Perfect persona to be kind of handling all that. I mean, that was the point. It was supposed to be getting Jane at a point in time when she'd be able to do this, and like that persona taking over is the perfect time. Literally freezing time right when she was in the middle of getting her doctor to stab himself. It's actually, well, I'll go ahead and talk about it, but it's actually interesting because we see that it seems like there is no limit necessarily on her power of influence, and maybe after, because I guess it also comes down to, like, if you do what she says, then you don't have to worry about it. Or because everyone in that facility, she got to help with this whole situation. Like, oh, I'm going to count on you people. Like, when the time came, we saw them older and everything. So it's like, this is decades later and they still remember. So it's either it stays in your subconscious until you do it, or, you know, like, because that makes me wonder, like, does that mean her messages have an infinite lifespan until you do it, or is there a point where it will disappear? Like, I guess it also, you know, I guess it also depends on whether she asks you to do something for the rest. Because remember, the doctor was told to stab himself in the eye, but I guess because Mr. Nobody stepped in, froze time and everything, it kind of unbroke her power over him, and so it ended up being a thing of like, oh no, I can do it again. Maybe, I don't know, because everyone else followed her command. Like his eye was still intact and everything. So, but it was really interesting, and I love how the whole thing broke down of like people, you know, bringing up stuff. It's like, do we have to really put it on a boy? It's like, yeah, it couldn't be like a girl or something. And it's like, yeah, well, what if we would actually put it on a boy? What if we put it on a dog? And the dude's like, I like dogs. It's like, okay, we could put it on a dog. Okay, but why do we make it visible? Yeah, because if it's visible, other people can see it and try and stop it. Like the bad guys could find it. I love that mentality because it's like they're actually thinking this through. It's like, that actually makes sense because let's not forget, Elliot literally walked around with it covering his body for like 18 years. And so it's like, oh, not only is it on a dog, it's on a dog and it's hidden. And the only way it's going to be unhidden because Marilyn was like, oh, what if we ring a bell to unlock it? And then like Harrison's like, oh, that's such a great idea. And so I love it. And it's like, lo and behold, Marilyn shows up later on when they play this song "Ring My Bell." I was like, oh my god, and you see all these like old people walking and dancing, because I even love that it's like, oh yeah, like even Mr. Nobody was like, oh yeah, she's super smart, she's super this and that, but it's like, but also she is crazy. She's going, you're gonna dance like there's a giant eye in the sky watching you, and I'm like, that's so crazy. Also, side note, I didn't talk about it, but I love that eye is literally just like snapping people out of existence to a certain degree. I know I shouldn't use that for example, but you can't help but think of it now just because of that. I didn't talk about him before, but I'm going to make sure to talk about him now, is that damn cockroach. What the hell is that? What is that going to turn into? Is that just supposed to be like a side character? And I love that Mouse being like talking to him. He's like, what do you mean we need people to make cheese? There's going to be plenty of cheese. We can easily make cheese. What do we need? We need this and that. It's like, what? Don't say that it won't fail. It's going to work this time. Basically talking about the fall of man at, because God says so or something like that. It's like, that is one wild ass cockroach. Because I was like, while he's giving this big speech, I'm like, you're going to get disintegrated. It's like, no. So I guess we're definitely going to be seeing more of that cockroach. But I love that, like, obviously the Recreator, it's like, oh, when it's summoned, it's just another eyeball in the sky, and they're looking at each other, and it ends up bringing back everyone, except we didn't see if Elliot got brought back. I guess him being connected to the D-Creator, it's like, he had to be wiped out of existence. Like, I guess, I don't know, like, the Recreator might have felt like there was no need to bring him back just because the D-Creator could be resummoned. I was almost hoping, and it turns out not, because I was like, does that mean that always in the sky there's always going to be the Recreator and D-Creator looking at each other? Because it's like, yeah, decreate someone, I'm gonna recreate them. I thought that was gonna be like something that's always gonna be happening, but it's like, no, they ended up vanishing later on. But I love that it's also like, I mean, it is such a huge thing in the sky. So like, of course, there's going to be like a whole bunch of people gathering, the newspapers and stuff. I mean, a news reporter and everything like that. So of course, it's going to make national news and stuff like that. But it was just kind of incredible. I guess in my head, I mean, to be fair, when that town originally disappeared, it was like, oh no, it was like big news. That's how Vic found out about it and ended up joining up with the team and everything. So I shouldn't be too surprised. But it was just so interesting. I also love, once again, another thing I forgot to talk about is Baphomet, the talking unicorn, and it's like, oh, like her and Niles being all flirty and stuff, and like even Kip being like, do I need to get you to a stable or something? It's like, what the hell? And since I brought him up earlier, it is kind of sad with the whole Rita situation when it comes to Elliot, because like for Elliot, it's like, you should have let me die, but for her, it's like, I made a choice. The fact of the matter is, it's like, you're so concerned about this world. She's like, to be fair, this world's kind of shitty. I've kind of seen the world and it is kind of shitty. Like, people in it kind of hurt each other and stuff like that. So it's like, hey, the fact is, we know there's no telling how much time we have left, which I love that Larry is like, so how long till the world? And then Kip is like 19 minutes later. Oh, really? Is that going to be the case? And he's like, I have no fucking idea. How about you ask the floating eye in the sky that's making everything disappear? And I think he had like something in his hand. It was like either a drink or a smoke or something, and then it disintegrated. He's like, damn it. I love that it did disintegrate objects too. It wasn't just people. It disintegrated everything. Even the van at one point in time, I'm like, oh, that sucks. But it's like, oh, never mind. They got it a couple minutes later. So, but the fact is, Rita's like, oh, you'll get it. I won't lie to you. My mind went kind of when she was like, oh, we can do anything, and Elliot was looking at her. I was like, there's part of my brain that was going a more dirty route of like, you can assume what I was thinking. But then another part of me was like, oh, maybe to kiss her. I thought something like that, but he never got a chance to say anything because he got disintegrated. I didn't see that coming. I was like, oh, right in front of Rita too, and it makes her feel bad because it's like she went through so much trouble to save him, and she couldn't, because she almost feels like, was it even, like, I didn't do anything in the end. I didn't save him. I thought I saved him. I thought I did good, and it didn't matter in the end. Kind of, not necessarily that it didn't matter, but she just felt like she had failed, after trying, because for the first time she wasn't so concerned about, she actually did something. She wasn't being selfish. She is waiting for Elliot at the end of the episode. So I love Marilyn showing up. I'm like, oh, you just happened because the bell rung. It's like, how did you get here? I guess it's like maybe something in that Dr. Harrison's power. Just something. It's like, oh no, she had to take a flight there, cut the priest open, climb inside of him, and now I'm here standing talking to a robot man. So yeah, this got where I need to be. I also love that she ended up blowing up her oxygen tank, which I'm like, oh, I mean, I guess for her it's like she finally had meaning in her life, and it kind of all came to that point, so she was okay sacrificing herself for the recreate. Like I said, it's so interesting. It's like, to fight a being like the Decreator, you had to literally go back in time and create a cult for the Recreator. That's kind of messed up in its own way. But I guess, like, in her own way, Dr. Harrison gave these people purpose and helped them out anyway, so it kind of was like a win-win situation in a certain regard, but still, it's just kind of crazy to think about that. And it also brought up an interesting conversation between the Chief and Vic, the whole situation, because it's like, you're working with the bad guy. It's like, for him, it's like, no, like, the thing is, for Vic, it's like, it's clear-cut, there's good and there's bad. The fact of the matter is, I chose the side of good, but the fact is you're willing to work with Mr. Nobody, because it's hard to say who you side with, because one side of things you're kind of like, well, yeah, you want to side with Vic and being like, oh yeah, good is good, like working with someone evil. But the thing is, Kip as well as Niles know that there are definite shades of gray, that things aren't so clear cut in the grand scheme of things. And I think I kind of lean more, like, obviously you don't agree with a lot of the way they handle things, but at the same time you're like, yeah, in the long run there are shades of gray. It isn't that simple, and speaking of Vic too, it's sad, like his arm ended up getting blown off, and he didn't want his dad to know, but Cliff pressed the button anyway. Now, part of me is wondering, is it just because, once again, trying to prove himself without his dad being around and stuff like that, and it's like, if his dad has to help and stuff like that, because, is it a situation because he knows how his dad's going to react? His dad, like, because he's going to feel more and more indebted to his dad. It's like if he doesn't do anything on his own, if he receives help from his dad, I guess he feels like he isn't growing, that he can't be the hero. Like all this, you know, is more so than anything to potentially like, hey, I'm gonna be a hero. But you know, he doesn't want to be the hero his father wants him to be. He wants to be a hero of his own choosing and his own making. But I think also maybe there's a part of him that's like, yeah, if his dad keeps going like this, maybe his dad's going to make him more machine than man potentially. Like I can say, I think it's just more so like he doesn't want to deal with his dad because his dad's just going to be all up in his face and it's just going to put his dad more and more in his business, and he doesn't want that. Like I said, he wants to stand up on his own 2 feet, but he feels because he's so busy trying to prove himself as a hero to his dad that I don't know. It was just kind of an interesting thing. I'm curious to see what ends up coming about that. We see his dad call him at the end, but he ignores the call, so doesn't mean his dad won't pop up later on, but we'll see. You also had that sad moment at the beginning where it was kind of like Kay was like, yeah, can I go back? I don't want to be Kay anymore. It's like, geez, like I said, that little girl is somewhere deep inside, and we never tackled it, but like even a doctor was like, oh yeah, something terrible must have happened to you for you to go from Kay to Jane. So it's like, dude. Because even Cliff starts asking about it, but Hammerhead is like, you're not gonna ask about, you're not gonna see her again, you're not even gonna ask her or bring her up again. So that's kind of that, you know. It's kind of sweet when Jane sees that, like, you know, the chief is there because he is so important to her. I wonder, do the rest of her personalities feel like that, or is it just Jane? Because in that moment, once again, it's kind of like, I guess Jane kind of pushed to the forefront because she just happened to snap back, or was it like the other personalities, like, oh, we'll step aside, we know how important this is to you. Like, it seems like they may not all feel the same way towards the chief like Jane does because he saved her, you know, so, which obviously tackling all that, you know, like I said, we saw how they first met up and everything, and also the fact is that Mr. Nobody set up something in the past. It's like, I need you to look for something, and Jane present day is like, who the fuck is the Doom Patrol? Which is like, okay, so like, is it going to be like the Doom Patrol is an existing thing and our heroes eventually take over that, or what? Or, you know, not unless it's some project of Niles or something like that, hence why he wanted Jane to look for it. It might be something, that might be what this has all been like. Niles, for whatever reason, has been building this superhero group or whatever, you know, and that's what this is, and Mr. Nobody's trying to stop it from being, I mean, because it doesn't seem like he looks at them as a threat, especially considering all the power he has, literally slowing down time like that, making Vic's arm explode like that, so it's like, I don't know. It can't be the fact that he looks at them as a threat. So that's why I'm kind of like, there must be an already established group within this universe known as the Doom Patrol, and our heroes eventually down the line take over for that hero. I also love that, like, Mr. Nobody's like, yeah, let's wrap this up. We, you know, let it be a 2-parter. We don't need to be making this a trilogy. So that was neat. There was also the whole situation with Larry, too. We learned a little bit more about Larry's situation with the creature. Obviously, you know, the whole torture situation. Like I said, I'm still not sure how I really understand that. Because like I brought it up before, I feel like this thing, because it was like, oh, how it survives on him is tortured. So it's like, it does seem like the creature tortures him just to keep itself fed. But at the same time, it's because, I guess because he's naturally so torturing himself that the creature feeds off that. So it's like, well, why don't I feed into the torture? Hence why it kind of bothers him so much. But I guess on some level, maybe it's just that the spirit wants him to understand it more. It just has a crazy way of going about it. But for Larry, it's like he doesn't know whether he's in, you know, if there's an afterlife for him. Is this the afterlife? Is he in hell? You know, because he's like, every time like he happens to look and he sees like all the people he cares about burning because of him, you know, that he put them in this situation. We even saw at the end of the episode where it's like his wife was there and part of her face was burned. It's like, that's sad to kind of see that, to kind of like live with that when you close your eyes and stuff. The chief did tell him to kind of talk to the spirit, kind of, you know, understand it a little bit more, you know, kind of explain to it what you see, because it might not know what he's seeing and what he's dealing with. I'm curious to see how that relationship ends up developing, Larry and that spirit, like what ends up becoming of that, you know? I am very interested to see where all of this takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.